Okay, I think we're live. Hi, everyone. My name is Leela Sinha. This is Impolite Conversations / Power Pivot, which is a project of my company, which is the Intensive Institute. And I just wanted to take a minute to go live and thank all of my new subscribers. Woohoo! I can finally customize my URL, and there are a couple of other perks that come with having an increased number of subscribers. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Effie Wild, who actually put me over the top, and thank you, everyone else who's joining me. I hope that you're joining me because you're interested, as well as to give me a hand. So thank you so much, and I'm really excited about where I'm going with this. I've been struggling with kind of what kind of platform and how I wanted to do things for a while. And so I've had stuff set up. I've got the podcast, which I'm in the process of fixing up some of the back end before I do another season. And I have this channel that I started mostly because people have been asking me where they can find more of what I'm doing, where they can find more of my ideas, where they can find more of the conversations that I'm having. Folks seem to like it. So and I'm delighted because I really think that this stuff is important, right? The having conversations that are considered impolite is right up front important, because the impolite conversation idea is actually gatekeeping, right? It's sociopolitical, cultural gatekeeping. It's how we keep things the way they are, and we don't want to keep things the way they are, right? We want to fight white supremacy. We want to, move away from racism as much as possible, given the trash that's in most of our heads, and we want to move toward a more just and equitable world. In order to do that, we have to start saying the things we haven't been saying. Especially, I live kind of on the border between white culture and other cultures, and white upper middle class kind of standard United States culture doesn't have a lot of room for these conversations. That's where we often learn that they're impolite. So we really have to break down those barriers. And we don't have to do it in tiny little groups anymore. We have the internet, we have YouTube, and we don't have to be mean about it, right? I think a lot of people take the presence of this kind of conversation as a license to be mean, to be cruel, to be unnecessarily cutting, and we don't have to do that. Like we can talk about stuff we haven't been talking about without injuring each other. That's not the same as without tone policing, right? Like tone policing is bad, and we don't want to injure each other, and that's something we have to figure out. So that's part of why I started this conversation. The other reason, obviously, power is everywhere. Power and money, power and class, power and privilege, power and money. Power and money, right? I think we really have to have the conversation around what does it mean to have wealth in this culture, and how can we honor the fact that we live in capitalism? Like we need to survive in capitalism. There's no way around it. Right now, we can't not earn money. It doesn't work. So we have to come up with ways to make capitalism as just as possible, as equitable as possible, while simultaneously functioning in a system that demands that we have money and that we exchange it for goods in order to survive. We can't deny our own survival. We can't, and that includes rest, right? We're not talking about a minimum level of survival. We're talking about like actual thriving, the enough spaciousness in our lives so that we can do some of this more deep, more complex, transformative work. So all of those things. And also intensives, right? Intensives are so vital to things like change work, so vital to things like disruption of the status quo. And we have to figure out how to hold power, how to hold it ethically, and how to be ethical leaders. So this is really kind of the end point, is that when we're leading, when we're using that force of personality, when we're using all the great ideas that we have that nobody else has, when we're doing that, we have to simultaneously allow ourselves the space to do things that nobody else thinks we could or should do, and keep our ethics engaged, keep ourselves connected to what we're doing and why we're doing it and how that works. So we can't do that alone. We need community to do that. And so where I'm moving us is toward conversations about all these things, but not just conversations, right? Conversations are just ground for behavior. And so we have to figure out what kinds of behaviors we need, what kinds of community we need, and move toward having that kind of community, that kind of support. Yes, this is tied with my business. Yes, I do some of this. I do one-on-one coaching. I do consulting. That's all part of it. But also, we need to be able to move into a space where the world can have a different idea about power, can have a different perspective on power, can use power more ethically, where power, as the tagline of my podcast says, power can corrupt, but it doesn't have to be that way. But in order for it to not be that way, we have to do active work. And so that's what this is about. This is about having those impolite conversations. This is about dismantling the structures of silence that support the status quo and the power imbalances that are not serving us. And talk about what it's like to choose to cede power. When is it appropriate to just not have power? And when is it appropriate to use your power to support somebody else? All kinds of interesting conversations. So thank you, everybody who's coming in. I'm really going to try now to fix the dysphoria problem. I'm really going to try to be on here more often. And I look forward to seeing you here with me and to having you spread the word. These conversations are more effective the more people who are having them. So definitely tell people, if you know folks who would be interested in this, bring them in, get them engaged, because then you can go away and have conversations about whatever I've said or whatever we're doing in other places, in other spaces, and that's how the conversation grows. So thank you again for being here. Shout out to everybody who has joined me recently. You will see a cleaner URL probably by tonight. And then we'll go on from there, because it's time for us to gather in power. It's time for us to gather in power and use that power for good. Thanks so much.